preparing the live to go live. Yes, and we are live now. All right.
Hello.
And hello. So, we are so sorry for the delay. We were expecting technical difficulties, and we should now wait probably for the artists to join. Tony, you got the counter going on, right? So we're expecting thousands and thousands
People.
of people. Absolutely. Why not? I mean, this is awesome. So
Nice. Let's start. People can watch and delay.
yeah,
They like to.
yeah, should be fine, I guess. So let me just double check. Oh, we have a delay. Speaking of delay, we do have quite a serious delay. No, we have two active. Oh, two. Wow, we are up to 2 viewers. Wow, that's so cool. All right. So should we wait? Should we wait for the welcome? Maybe people can watch us sip a cup of coffee in between.
ASMR.
Yeah. Well, this is special signature coffee just for, warming up your vocal folds and your throat and everything. Yeah. So let me take another sip and then we'll see what happens. That's so good.
By the way, how's my volume? My
fine.
microphone volume compared to this?
This ain't a song for the...
Yeah, Bon Jovi is louder. But that's just his personality, I guess.
Yeah. So is it?
You should dial it down a little, or
What,
yeah.
my microphone or the audio?
No. Bon Jovi is louder. Way
Then I'm
louder.
gonna dial my microphone up, not him down.
Yeah. Oh, or that. Yeah. Speak
Am
up.
I roughly
Speak
the
up.
same volume as
him right now.
Yeah.
Good.
I guess that's it. Yeah.
Then
Should be
you
fine.
can dial yourself up too, because you're
Yeah.
not the same volume as him yet.
Yeah, here in my monitor it shows that I'm close to 0 decibels. So if I'm gonna be any louder anytime soon, it will totally overdrive. So, and I don't want that.
Then I'm gonna dial myself down and Bon Jovi.
And Bon Jovi. Yeah.
That we have.
Sorry, John. Yeah. So, how about the active viewers?
It's 4. I think
Yeah,
we should
4.
start,
So,
and then
so you are they aware that they are probably in the wrong live stream? So do they get it?
I've posted it to the chat. There's no other way of letting them know.
Oh shoot! All right. So I guess I could rename the other one to please come over to the right one.
That's a good idea.
As soon as I find my mouse cursor. So, can I do that? Let's see. So, put my smarty glasses on so I look more intelligent. Come over to the other side. Live stream. And save. Let's see. And we go to live streams and see, come over to the other live stream. And as far as I'm concerned, there is no active viewers there anymore. So they totally left, or they are actually live with us.
That's very nice.
Okay, so far so nice. So here we are discussing some vocal effects. So so a little blah blah up front. Tony and I, we go kind of way back. We've been in contact for quite a while, and at a certain point we were discussing all sorts of crazy vocal nerd stuff and getting more and more into detail, and okay, show me what you got, I show you what I got so far. And so we ended up like, yeah, okay, let's do this seriously and yeah, for the better part of was about since we started collecting all sort of things and gathering information and doing a little research here and there. I guess it's roughly 2 years, 2.5 years since we finally came up with the vocal effects roadmap, if I remember correctly.
Should be
So,
correct.
yeah, something like that. So this is the interesting stuff that's going to happen now. First, a little introduction to what the heck are vocal effects. So, as soon as my keynote actually works, and I'm almost positive it should work, so you shouldn't see a thing up until I click. So, this here is vocal effects, and of course, we need a subtitle for things just to make clear we're on the right track. An overview. And for all of you who were looking forward to having the answer to everything concerning vocal effects, I'm sorry, we'll get there, but not today. So, yeah, this is it. And first of all, there is the question, what are vocal effects? So, some time ago, I find it useful to have a definition. You know, we are not trying to, go on fighting others on names, on special, terminology and everything. Every one of you who's been out there on the interweb, on YouTube, has stumbled upon different names for different things and probably quite confused. So, this is just a suggestion. So my definition, vocal effects are, and now I'm going to read this slowly, a distinct auditory alteration to a fully phonated, clean sound. Everyone who's already a vocal teacher, a vocal nerd, or who is in singing, has been for quite a while, has done their homework, their research, may or may not know what this means, so I'm going over it step by step. It's distinct auditory alteration, just meaning we can hear it. We can hear there is a clear difference to a fully phonated, clean sound, just means the vocal folds are closing. And it is a clean sound, meaning there is nothing, not the rest part of the breakfast left somewhere in your throat or whatever, no vocal injuries or something that in the way blocks the path. So, in other words, you can clearly hear a difference to a clean sound where the vocal folds close. So, this is, again, as I say, just a suggestion, but something we can work on in the future. So, in order to determine, is this really a vocal effect or is this something different? Okay, Toni, you got something to add to that? Or maybe just something, something to
No,
share,
I
an
think
anecdote?
I think it's a nice definition, and at the same time, as a lot of definitions actually are, it is kind of circular because it says a vocal effect is an alteration to a sound that has no vocal effects.
Yeah,
In a
exactly.
way.
Yeah, in a
Um,
way it is. In a way it is. Yeah.
but it will make more sense as we go on.
Yeah.
We have examples, but I'm
I
gonna
think
let you do the presentation.
I'm sure there is. So again, this is, as Toni, we talked about this for a really long time, how to sort of summarize things, how to make things easier, how to simplify. Because the deeper you dig, the more information you got, and the more you see, wow, this is totally overwhelming. With everything in science, it's like that. As looking at it, a shallow overview, it's, oh yeah, okay, I get that. I can totally follow, and the more you go into depth, it's like, oh, this is getting crazy. This is getting totally out of hand. So at a certain point, yeah, explanations have to be somewhere in the mix between, oh, I can still follow, and yeah, but it's not too shallow. There is some more depth to it. So it's always a compromise, as everything in life. So again, as a start, I'd like to discuss that probably all of you, everyone, every human being at a certain point in their life did some vocal effects with their voice, or at least observed or witnessed vocal effects, others doing them, and not in singing. So I call this, or we call this, vocal effects in their natural habitat. And let's see what this is. For instance, a baby crying. Ah! Okay.
Can I give my imitation of a baby crying
No,
too?
please do. You're better. Yeah, Tony, you're quite the baby. That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, mine was more like singing-ish. Yours
Yeah.
was really, really authentic.
Did your baby have vibrato?
I guess all of them. Yeah. Ah! Yeah, I guess that's it.
That's
fine.
what baby sounds like.
Yeah.
Good.
Natural. So yeah, right. So very good. Thanks for that. So there is a vocal effect. It is not a clean sound. So we could call that a vocal effect. And then you probably know these things. Lifting heavy stuff. And every one of you with a medical background or whatever, you probably stumbled upon the expression of the Valsalva maneuver, which is basically this. Oh, wait.
There's a typo. There's a typo. Valsalva. So just imagine the S and second
Yeah.
V are switched.
Yeah, okay. Valsalva.
So whoever noticed is very
Good. You know, I planted this one on purpose. Yeah. You know, that's the typical teacher reaction to mistakes. So, nevertheless, this is what happens if you lift something heavy. So, for every male can relate. Something like that. Okay, sorry, just kidding. But this is something. What we do here is we close up everything. We close our vocal folds, so the extra air in our pharynx, in our lungs, really compressed. So we got an extra bonus of strength. And as a result, we probably really easy dig into or dive into the vocal effect that is caused by the Valsalva maneuver. Correct.
I have another example for the Valsalva maneuver actually.
Yeah, sure.
It's not heavy lifting, but it's heavy pressing. And I've been told before that if you defecate like that, you're likely to get hemorrhoids. So I don't recommend it anymore. The sound is roughly the same.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. And again, one can hear the effect, but thanks for that input.
Yeah, don't poop like that though. It's not healthy.
Don't poop like that. Yeah. Isn't that Pavarotti who said something like "is going for number 2 in the bathroom"? So, like when explaining, when he's not talking about the Valsalva maneuver, but about the support, I guess. So it's like going for number 2.
Yeah, there's this interesting debate within classical vocal pedagogy whether singing is like peeing or like pooping. Because that
it doesn't have to be like anything like that, but okay.
yeah.
Okay, very good. So let's carry on. And then there is emotional screaming. Can be joy, can be fear, pain, despair, something like that, or just whoa, whatever you're gonna go for. However you party. So you've probably heard that. Your voice does funny things. And
You're tearing me apart, Lisa.
Yeah, like that. Very good. So yeah, this is what happens. Loud shouting, hey! Something like that. That's my car, you idiot. So
It's a very
wait,
refined shout. It's like if anyone's trying to steal your car and you're like, hey, they're like, oh, what a nice distortion.
Yeah. Wow, cool, man.
I'm not gonna steal your car. Can you sing in my band, please?
Well, instead, can you teach me how to do that? So here's your keys back. So
If I get a free lesson from you.
yeah. Not actually happened in the past, but you know, maybe who knows what's gonna come. So that's loud shouting, and then I call it noises of annoyance. like, you know, you hang up the phone and go like, such an idiot. Probably you are all so calm and have never experienced any of that, so just and everything's just fine, but regular people are annoyed from time to time, and probably you heard that. And if not in real life, maybe on, you know, The Simpsons, on the typical Marge Simpsons, something like that. You can do this better, I'm pretty sure, Tony.
No, I think it's interesting how different people have different sounds of annoyance. So it's like we have we have this one.
Yeah.
We also sometimes have we have this one.
Yeah, okay.
Some people are,
Yeah.
and some people also go for this one.
Yeah, right.
That's like, oh, we don't mention the names yet, but it's like, oh, you go for this vocal effect when you're annoyed. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's your personality type.
Interesting. Okay. And this sound, do you experience it any more often in the past? So yeah.
Is this sound real? Have you ever seen it?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And last but not least, and many underestimate this vocal effect, it's whispering. Yeah, it's like that, you know? Can be really open, and it's really like that. It's no voice at all, and then all kinds of constrictions happening. Yeah, to that. And in our test, we checked with John Jovi. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm so sick. Call my mother. Something like that. So where we have definitely constriction in it and other things happening, and we'll talk about that later. So, but so far, this has not yet anything to do with music per se.
Before we go on, we have a couple of comments in the chat. That I
Oh,
wanna
that's cool.
address.
That's cool.
We
I
have
make room for the comments.
we have French colleague Arnaud comment on the
Arnaud,
Valsalva
Arnaud.
maneuver, which I'm very grateful for. He won't refute the example, but he'd say it's useful as a path only because the actual Valsalva maneuver, if done well, does not allow for any sound, since it's made to close the lungs in order to create a rigid unity from larynx to pelvis, basically a lever. And that is correct. He clearly knows more about the medical terminology than we do. So basically, do the Valsalva maneuver badly, allow for sound, and you're gonna get a nice distortion.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for that input. And we stumble upon this later. Sometimes messy helps us. You know, playing around with being sloppy and messy. This really helps, perhaps with many things in life, but especially with acquiring vocal effects. It's like, oh shoot, how did that happen? This happened by accident, totally, and now can reproduce it. So yeah, very good. Correct. So the Valsalva maneuver itself should not create a sound. The vocal folds should close when done correctly. But you know, human after all. So yeah, very good. So we should probably mention this to all the other 1,000 viewers. Feel free to comment, to ask, and of course compliments are always welcome. Just to mention this, so no one, so very good encouragement, yeah, you know, very good, love those comments, keep them going. All right. So now we're getting into the idea of the structure. For those of you who have seen the teaser and things we've posted before, we ended up, Toni and I, with a nice map, a roadmap of vocal effects. But it's not like just posted all kinds of weird terminology just on a whiteboard. It's like it has a structure, and of course there's a lot of we're Germans, you know. We don't brag with those things. Yeah, okay, just took me a few years, but okay, what doesn't really matter. So let's go on with that and see if we can invite you to follow us down that road and how we came up with structure and the categories, and maybe you'll learn something. So, this is it again. So we have to ask ourselves the question: what ingredients do vocal effects need? As in a recipe, and we'll get to recipes later. Toni has prepared some awesome recipes for us. It's going to be so tasty. Yum yum. So, the thing is, our physiology is pretty much alike among humans. Of course, there's certain things differ from another, but we all got the same kinds of ingredients we can use. So I think we can all agree on there are some things that have to vibrate in order to transport a tone, a frequency, something. So, and the things we got in our throat that can actually vibrate are, surprise, the true vocal folds, which I'm using right now, and you've done probably for the better part of your life so far. Then we have the false folds, or the ventricular folds, or the vestibular folds, or the false chords. There are several names for them. So actually another membrane can...
I'm gonna make a bad joke. If
Yeah,
you call them false chords, make sure it's C-O-R-D, not C-H-O-R-D, because a false chord with an H is
yeah, that's really good.
jazz.
Yeah. Yeah, if you
Sorry,
want to play
go on.
the A major and for some reason you put a C in that chord, that's the false chord then, and not the false chord. Yeah, chords, but always plural. So yeah, so far so good. And then we have the arytenoids, which are cartilages. We'll get to that later, just for argument's sake. And the epiglottis. And this one you will use a lot of times during the day without even noticing. So these are the things that can vibrate. So these are the ingredients we're stuck with. So let's try to get these moving. And not only that, we can look into how do they move. So our structure here, hello. Now it's working. The structure, or finding the categories, we asked the questions: what is vibrating? And where does it vibrate? How does it vibrate? And to go all crazy, in what combination does it vibrate? So, and with this structure, this category, well, with these questions, we can actually put things into different categories and see, if we take this and vibrate it in that way, in the combination with the other ingredients, we get this effect. We can sound like, yeah, we talked about this before, this is how, Kurt Cobain sounds, or like, this is the typical Linkin Park sound, or this is whatever, so just an idea. So these are the recipes, but first we needed to define the ingredients. So now I wonder why my mouse would not work. It's weekend, so it's probably already on the holidays. So, and the most interesting ingredient, so I dare judge. The most interesting ingredients are in fact the true vocal folds, simply because they provide us with the ability to sing and speak and scream. So, but they can do amazing things. So, something you all probably know as singers, as voice teachers, blah blah, the vocal registers. So, a change in the vocal register, the length and the mass of the vocal folds itself. Then we can change, and this is interesting as we speak about screams, creaking, and all this kind of stuff, the vibratory pattern. When speaking in a clean voice, we got a distinct vibratory pattern. So, but we can change that. More on that later. And then, of course, we have the chord closure, which I'm changing right now. So, this is something. And we're not getting too much into detail because there are certain things we can define as chord closure. and some would argue, oh no, this is a different kind of chord closure, and this leads us to the next one. This is compression, vocal compression, and there are some similarities and also some errors you can make when you think, this is chord closure. Does it have a compression component? Yeah, absolutely, but not all the time, and vice versa. So, not too much into detail. Just to give you an idea, this is what true folds can do. Not only close and open, or vibrate at a certain frequency. They have so many possibilities. Wow, that alone is amazing. And the other ingredients, yeah, sure, they do their part as well, but they are not as versatile as the vocal folds. Correct me if I'm wrong. Any comments on that? Or are they just typing like crazy now?
Probably, probably we're just very good at modulating the vocal fold parameters. And we could get maybe similarly good at modulating other parameters, but I'm gonna just let you go on. And so far, no one's in the chat with any complaints. So
no complaints yet. So they come afterwards, I guess. So yeah. This is a term that we discussed if we're actually going to use the term the laryngopharynx. The pharynx is the throat, and the laryngopharynx especially is the throat surrounded or including the larynx.
We should call it pharyngolarynx.
Yeah, we should. Why not?
Pharyngopharynx.
Or Peter, we could call it Peter. Pharyngopharynx. Yeah. We could do that as well. So, just, to be more specific and also stay vague at the same time. So, yeah. What can we do? A lot of things. But I call it what the twang. Because we decided to use the term twang here because many singers know the term twang, and right now we're not getting into the detail what twang, how anterior, posterior, or lateral constriction or whatever. So the only question is to what degree do we use constriction or narrowing to attain or to get to a certain outcome. So more on that later. And now we are going for the false folds. The parameters are quite simple and straightforward. They can be open, of course, or not active at all. And then approximated, which is something, wow, and now are the comments here. Yeah, like that. So they are not really vibrating, but they are closing or narrowing the vocal tract. And then, wow, hello false folds. False folds, thank you for participating in the sound, very good. And then they can actually vibrate. They can vibrate regularly, and of course, no, not of course, but they can vibrate irregularly. So, and this calls for a different sound. False folds, also very cool. We could probably give an entire live stream on the false folds. So, yeah.
We might at some point.
We might as well. Yeah, not sure about that yet. So, not decided. Okay, and now again, it's pretty straightforward as we go into the arytenoid cartilages, which are cartilages somewhere here in the back, where at the end of the vocal folds there are they raise like sort of. Tony, you got some really nice pictures coming up, so we're gonna explain with that.
Do I? Okay.
I
might. Yeah.
I think you had those.
I have those. Yeah.
Or maybe they're too intimate for you to share. I feel so hectic. Oh my original cartridges are exposed.
Not on the internet. Okay. Yeah. I might. Yeah.
So on a third date, baby, but not. Yeah. Okay. So the parameters here, again, they can just not vibrate. So that's the thing, and they can vibrate regularly and irregularly. So, and this causes for different sounds. This just causes different sounds, different vibrations. Interesting. So wait a second. We got so many parameters here on the different ingredients. So it's not just the ingredients we spoke about, which are quite a lot, but it's also a question in what way do they vibrate. So wow, this, you can guess, this is going to be complex. And last but not least, hello? I need an assistant here. I do. Just pressing the mouse. doing this. Okay, yeah. The epiglottis. And the epiglottis, this is maybe not Kermit the Frog, or we can joke about that from Louis Armstrong to Shakira and whatever. So the epiglottis can do also interesting things. Of course, it can totally close the vocal tract, so in order you don't accidentally suffocate from swallow something you don't want. So it's not in the wrong tube. So open meaning, oh no, it's open. Just the default setting for the epiglottis. And then we can retract it, and also the epiglottis can, and this is really interesting, vibrate against the arytenoid cartilages. This is looks very interesting if you visualize it, or do you, how's it called, the tube camera? No, it's called differently. I just don't come with
The endoscopy thing.
the endoscopy. Thank you.
Yeah.
You got this one for private use. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a vocal coach. I don't earn that much money, so I can afford one. So, but yeah, the endoscopy, that's really good.
I have
So,
something to add concerning the epiglottis, because I know vocal coaches are watching, and they might be wondering.
yeah,
Oh, I thought retracting the epiglottis makes a difference. So not the Kermit one, but more of this one, for example. And actually, there's
Yeah.
many ways to shape the larynx, including the epiglottis. And the epiglottis itself has various parts that could retract. So the whole epiglottis could be like this, or it could be like this, and that all makes different sounds. So we're keeping it simple for right now. We're not mentioning all the possibilities. We're just mentioning the ones that are most interesting for vocal effects. And I see one question in the chat
yeah,
concerning the arytenoid cartilages. This is a very informed question, because it's not actually the arytenoid cartilages in the medical sense that we're talking about when we're talking about the arytenoid cartilages. We're talking about the cuneiform and corniculate cartilages that sit on top of the arytenoid cartilages, sometimes are viewed as a part of the arytenoid cartilage complex. And as arytenoids sounds nicer and is more established as a terminology, we're being peer pressurized to use the same term too. No, we're deciding to do so. But actually, we're not referring to the arytenoid cartilages, but I'm going to type it into the chat: cuneiform and corniculate cartilages.
yeah. That would be absolutely from a pure physiological point of view. This would be more correct, right? But you know, as I said before, we needed to simplify certain things. And also, we were pretty aware of biases. We were pretty aware that we could have, you know, dug deeper on so many terms. That is true. But this is what every science has to offer, is you can always dig deeper. There's always a more complex
And
structure.
we might at some point, but this is the introductory thing.
Yeah, we might. You
Yeah.
know, exactly. So, look, and here is the thing where it all adds up. Ta-da-da-da! So, here's the structural elements so far. What are the ingredients? What is vibrating? Where? How? And in what combination? So, and as you guys have seen so far, it has gotten totally complex. Can anyone repeat all the things we just said? Even I couldn't. So, yeah, so that's the thing. So we ended up with, hello, I need the assistant here. With this one. Whew, this is complex, right? So, we'll get into detail, but just so you see, of course it looks nice. The colors, the fonts and everything. Of course, it looks nice. But just to give you an idea, what we see here at the top, this is where. The where and what so far. And then at the very bottom, we can sort of see here's an idea of terminology we would use to describe things. And in between, and this is why there are the arrows connecting from top to bottom, this is all the parameters we can change so far. I'm gonna dive out here, and Toni, I give the word over to you. So far, this is everyone's. We are losing viewers with too much information.
Are we? Oh yeah, we lost one.
Oh,
Yeah.
shoot. Oh, damn it! Oh, one follower. Shoot! How did that happen? So
Okay,
yeah,
I'm gonna try to share my screen.
yeah.
And I don't see YouTube anymore, so maybe you can check whether actually this is not only not only visible but actually readable.
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna start talking about the vocal effects roadmap until anyone stops me.
Oh, this could take a while. Yeah. Okay, I'll be back.
So, basically we have the true vocal folds, as Marco already told you. We have several parameters of the true vocal folds that we can modulate. And we're going to start with the vocal register, which also, as lots of the things we talked about today, could be its own lecture of 90 or more minutes. But we decided to split this big spectrum of possible coordinations into 5 categories, namely pulse register, and you can hear why it's called pulse register. You might also know it as fry, but as you're going to notice, fry is being used for many sounds. So this one, to avoid confusion, we call pulse register. It's very low in the range. And then the normal speaking voice, which is not as low in the range, but the second lowest, we call chest voice. You might also know it as modal voice. Full voice. And then it gets more difficult again with the terminology. So we just stay with chest voice. And we could go more into depth about what exactly defines chest voice. We're not going to do that right now. I'm just going to say it's a speaking voice. And we can also yell in our speaking voice. Hey! So this would be chest voice too. But most of the time, we have it very relaxed and low. If we go to a higher range without taking up the volume, without staying in our speech voice, we might call that a mixed voice. What is it mixing though? Chest voice and head voice. Well, this is again a very simplified explanation of what mixed voice is. And there's not one, there's just many ways to kind of give the impression that we're living in a high range with still some of the associations of chest there. If we just make it easy for ourselves and we go to the high range without taking any of the chest associations up, we have the head voice. And some people might have very hard opinions on how head voice is different from falsetto, another term that you might have heard before, but we're going to keep it simple and say chest voice, head voice, mixed voice. And then the last one, the highest one, potentially would be the whistle register. And that is the first category of parameters we can change on the vocal folds. We can change the vibratory pattern too. The vibratory pattern I'm speaking in right now is clean. If I get a bit lazy and a bit tired, you can hear a bit of creaking coming in. This is the first thing that some people would call fry, but it's not the same as the low vocal register that we call pulse. It's just, something you can do in chest voice, in head voice. And the last one, the last example I gave, it already got quite irregular. So that's a more extreme version of the same effect of creaking. If we go into the other direction, so if it's not lazy, but it actually uses a lot of air, that's what we call grunt. So that's a different type of irregular vibration, coming from different actions. Chord closure, in the way that we use it, is going to be mostly concerned with whether the vocal folds close, and if so, how hard. It's not concerned with for how long or how quickly they close, but just, do you hear a bit of air escaping? Then they're not closing completely. That's called breathiphonation. And we could just whisper without any closure at all. If I have the opposite, very squeezed vocal folds, we call that pressed phonation. And that takes a lot of effort for very little sound. If we have a more reasonable effort for a more reasonable outcome, so enough bang for our bucks, that feels like the sound is flowing, and we call that flow phonation. We could have flow phonation in this kind of way. We could also have a flow phonation in louder, more constricted sounds, but more on that later. Flow phonation just is referring to the pressure balance that happens if the vocal folds close in a particular way. Compression. This is a very interesting term of all of these terms, because there's 1,000 things that people refer to as compression. We could refer to just the closure of the vocal folds as medial compression already. We could refer to the sound association we have, like a dark dampened thing, as more compressed. But in this sense, in this case, we're referring to it as this kind of thing. It's related to the Valsalva thing we talked about. The extreme form of compression we call hypercompression. And if we looked into the vocal tract, which I did, and many people before me have done, we can see the larynx is more narrowed. The false folds are more narrowed, not necessarily touching, but pressing down on the true folds so that the closure is being assisted. And we hear that as a compressed sound. If we just have closure without compression, that sounds more easy. If we have a bit of compression like this, it sounds like I have a bit of a bellyache, but it's not the grandpa voice yet. So that's a spectrum. At least in the low range, we can also treat it like a spectrum. It's gonna get harder as we go higher, but I'm not gonna go too much into depth. Let's go to the pharyngolarynx.
Tony,
Yeah.
also just a thing to add. I really like to point out that these two, the chord closure and the compression, are so often mixed up. So many students, and unfortunately singing teachers as well, mix them up and are not really able to differentiate, are not really able to tell flow phonation from closed quotient and that sort of stuff. Many people say, oh, I sing hypercompressed, where they actually just use good, good closure, or in order to get good closure, they use compression and not good flow phonation. So this is really interesting, maybe new to some people, and for us it was important to point that out, that these are in fact two different categories. So just to add that.
By the way, do you guys see the vocal effects roadmap on my screen, or do you see my face? If you only see my face and only see the roadmap on Marco's screen, then we're not doing this right. Good.
Yeah,
nice.
I guess.
Hello.
As far as I can see on YouTube, There's the roadmap and the picture of either you or me is
Nice,
implicit.
nice, very
Just
good.
shows up. Awesome.
Yeah. I was just confused because my YouTube stream wasn't live and I saw my own face, which was weird.
Okay.
I mean, it's always weird if you see your own face without preparation, but especially in a YouTube live stream context.
Yeah.
The laryngopharynx, and this is kind of a messy term because, of course, it exists, but it's quite a big space. And we're not really going into detail about what exact part we mean because there's different possibilities. As Marcos mentioned before, people don't really agree on what exactly twang is. And we haven't mentioned the term on the vocal effects roadmap, but I'm going to reference it here. We have actually. We have. Basically, we're going to talk about twang as a nasty sound, a sound that gives core to our normal singing voice. We're gonna call that one twang, even though there's several ways of interpreting the term, but this one makes most sense in the context of vocal effects. If I have no twang, my laryngopharynx is less constricted.
And Tony, in a discussion between the two of us, we both personally did agree with Carrie Obert on the twang term, but that would be a topic for another session then. So just for anyone who's asking, do you have an opinion on twang at all? Yes, we do, but not today. So.
We could have subtle twang or distinct twang. This is something we kind of copied from Complete Vocal Technique. They call it necessary twang versus distinct twang. Necessary meaning you don't necessarily hear it, but it is there. If we look, there would be a bit of this narrowing that helps the vocal folds close, that helps certain vocal effects stay sustainable. And we're not gonna make the value judgment of whether it's necessary or not, because this is highly dependent on context and also like personal resilience, but whether it's subtle or distinct. A is distinct. A is subtle. A is no twang at all. The next three categories are supraglottic vibrations. So it's a complicated term, but it doesn't have to be. It just means above the vocal folds. So we could have the false folds, ventricular folds, vestibular folds, vibrating irregularly, regularly, or not at all, either just being approximated or completely open. If I don't use my false folds at all, if I keep them open or passive, it sounds like this. If I approximate them more, the sound gets a bit pressed. But that's not the only sound that uses the false folds. If I do something like this, which is not pressed, the false folds are still approximating. So there's different contexts that we need them for. If I let them vibrate regularly, that's actually an irregular vibration example. I fucked up, but it's actually nice that you get this one first.
We can't say this word here, sorry. So,
okay, instead of fuck, I'm gonna say messed up now. So I'm not gonna say fucked up anymore.
Oh, you can use a German word. No one's gonna recognize it anyway. So.
It does share a certain phonetic resemblance, though. Ich habe aufgefickt. We don't really say that.
Yeah, we don't say that on the
okay, so let's not say aufgefickt in this stream anymore. And I'm gonna try to get a nice. I'm gonna try to get a nice regular example. So that was very regular, and you could hear in comparison to the one I gave before, which sounded more dirty, more noisy. This one almost sounded machine-like. We didn't really have noise in there. We just had an undertone, two fundamental pitches. Sounds like I'm singing an octave lower. The arytenoid cartilages, we talked about them before, and we actually mean little bumps on top of the arytenoid cartilages, they can either not vibrate or they can vibrate regularly. You could hear kind of this pitch. It could be a bit lower too, like this. Or they could vibrate irregularly. And it's a bit hard to control that in isolation. But if we do that together with the true false, so let's say we pick, don't know if you see that, my mouse, chest voice here, and then regular vibration. I hope my example is going to be good. Yes, that was a very good example. You could hear this machine-like sound again, but now with a different interval than my distortion. That's usually the way you can distinguish false faults and arytenoids. And then in other contexts where the vocal folds don't vibrate regularly, the arytenoids are also vibrating not in a regular way because they have no reason to copy any of the frequencies of the true vocal folds or vibrate in any interval in relation to the vocal folds that makes sense. And the last part is the epiglottis. You can either keep it open or retract it with the help of the tongue root, like that. So we get the Kermit the Frog sound, and you hear that in I Am Beautiful, Christina Aguilera, or Ooh, Baby, When You Talk Like That, Shakira, or, and that would be the third way. Going even further, I See Trees, the Louis Armstrong sound, where they vibrate against the arytenoids. And I think that would be a run through the vocal effects roadmap. We haven't mentioned most of the effect names yet, because if we just explain it like that, it takes a lot of time. Probably that was like 10 minutes now, or even 15. Who has that time? Ain't nobody got time for that. So we need terms to make it a bit easier. And now the question is, shall I continue with a couple of recipes, or do you want to add something?
Who are you asking? So
Anyone, you
anyone.
or
So,
the viewers.
why am I gonna call my mother on that one? So, yeah, very, very good. And the thing is, in this, it was important to us that we do not
Oops.
mention. Whoops.
Sorry, I just saw on the live stream I accidentally clicked on a video, but that was not live, so sorry.
So you're doing things in between, right? So yeah,
I'm reading
keep talk-
comments.
Just
Yeah.
keep talking. I'm gonna just check my emails. I'm gonna do some online banking right now. So I'm gonna play online soccer. Yeah, whatever. So the thing is, we did that on purpose, because here we are talking about ingredients and how we mix these ingredients in a bowl or something. So and if we talk about, whatever, butter and eggs and water, milk, something like that, we don't name it cake ingredient 2 or whatever, sauerkraut stuff. It's not just the end product yet. It's just the ingredients and how we can use them. So, and now we can add these ingredients and say, okay, let's pick that. Let's squish this a little bit up and then put it in the oven for the good part of half an hour, and it's gonna be an awesome cake, muffin, or whatever. So this is it. Maybe before naming any names, we could go back. Oh, you're still in shared screen. So if you can just for a second unshare your screen. Unshare your screen, like that.
I think I've unshared my screen
Yeah,
now.
you've unshared the screen successfully. So, very good. We could now go back to these, just for a sec, for argument's sake, and say, aha, now as we go back to Crying Baby, which you've done so authentically, and the Valsalva maneuver and this, maybe we can already hear or tell or observe which ingredients we are hearing, and or when we're playing around with these vocal effects, we can feel that we're engaging them. So if we do My Baby Scream, which is more like something like that, which are without naming names, what is that? What is that? What is happening? Any of you can try. Toni did much better than I did.
I just want to add one thing very quickly. I want to address one question from the chat.
Yeah, sure.
Namely whether tongue and jaw and velum and other parts of the vocal tract contribute. And this is a very good question because they totally contribute to the sound, but in our vocal effects roadmap, they don't contribute to the effect itself. So the effect is not what defines the whole sound. The effect is just what happens here. We're basically concerned just with the laryngopharynx, everything that's in there. Of course, just one example, if I do my distortion, I could do that with a higher larynx position, and the sound gets brighter. I could do it with my tongue being retracted, which also retracts the epiglottis. It's still distortion, not a growl. I could do it with my jaw very open, which makes distortion harder. I could do it with my mouth very spread, which makes distortion easier. And you can very easily hear those tendencies that distortion, for example, has. We left these sound color parameters out because they're not concerned with the effect itself. They're concerned with sound color. Or, people coming from an still background will know these as figures. And basically what we did is we applied the same idea of, okay, we have different parameters in the vocal tract that can do different figures, like dancers or ice skaters, so to say. But we focused more on this part because this one, for example, in still voice training, not trying to throw shade on any method, especially no method that doesn't want to be any method. But they usually don't focus too much on. I was throwing shade. I'm sorry. In this context, we're more concerned with what exactly, for example, the false folds can do, not just whether they're there, but whether they vibrate regularly, irregularly. So we're going more into detail on one part, more into depth, you could say, on a certain in a certain field, but not as much into breadth. Is that a word? Yeah. As a method would go that is concerned with singing in general. Yeah.
Here's
I'll let you go on.
An interesting thing. If you look, I use that with students. Let me begin the sentence this way. With students, I often use the spectrum analysis or spectrum view. So we can see what the formants do when we do certain things with vowels, with placement, with, embouchure and whatever. So, and most of it applies to vocal effects the same way. Same way we reshape our mouth, our entire, articulation area. Let's call it that simple, because there are so many other ingredients also involved there. So, and of course, they all contribute to the sound. And you're absolutely right when you say, wait a second, you said defining whether it is a vocal effect or not is purely based on the auditory impression I get. Exactly. But this is how far we get in terms of this was what our motor does, this is what vibrates and where it vibrates. The question whether, how and to what degree you modify your sound is a totally, to me, a stylistic element, and stylistic elements is often a cause for trouble, even amongst within a genre. So, and it's totally not universal because it's so unique and you can do so many different things and achieve so many different sounds or attain so many different parts of overtones and whatever. So this is it's almost exponentially complex if we add that. So this is unique up to you as a singer, as an artist, as a vocal, vocal artist at the end of the day, right? So regardless if you just shout at someone or talk or scream or sing.
Yes.
So far.
You announced that I'm gonna show my arytenoid cartilages.
Yeah, please do.
I will.
If you have that photo, but then you
I
get a
have. I
legendary as
have.
well.
I
So,
just have to go there.
yeah,
Do you see my presentation?
I do.
Good.
I do. I do. I do.
I will search for something that looks like a larynx in this presentation. This does look like a larynx. Actually, we're going to use the picture that comes before that because that's what the vocal tract would look like if we cut someone in half like this. And before maybe gave them medication so it wouldn't hurt. So we have the tongue, the uvula or velum, all the stuff that Ella has talked about in the comments. But we're mostly concerned with this part here. The laryngopharynx, the epiglottis, not so much the esophagus, but the vocal folds and the stuff that they haven't depicted here that if we watch from above with an endoscope looks like this. So we have the true vocal folds, number one. Those are the nice white or light gray tissues here. Then we have on top of the true vocal folds, the false vocal folds or ventricular folds. And in this case, they are open. They are not approximating at all, just relaxing. We have the arytenoid cartilages, or actually, that's the position of the arytenoid cartilages, but we don't see them because above them we have the cuneiform and cornicular cartilages. So that little bump here is part of what we mean by 0.3. And we have the epiglottis, which in my case is a bit asymmetrical is the right stress. So we actually do see lots of variation in what those body parts look like. So it's just as diverse on the inside as it is on the outside. And the fifth point we have is the aryepiglottic folds. We haven't mentioned them so far because they're not super important for sound creation and vocal effects, but they might sometimes join the vibration party just for the fun of it, not for an actual sound result. And I'm gonna see if there's more to say about this. These are the supraglottic structures. So if you remember the vocal effects roadmap, maybe Marco can show it on his screen.
Yeah, just
Only if it's no effort. Regions 2 to 5 are what we refer to as supraglottic structures. So more than half of our chart is concerned with just 0.1, just the vocal folds. So yeah, we do have more detail there, and that might be because we use them more often. Maybe if we use the false folds just as often and just as consciously, we could get a similar kind of control over them. But for now, even just
question would be from a purely evolutionary standpoint, when would people be able, because the tissue structure of the true vocal folds is a little different than the tissue.
Yeah. Oops. I accidentally played musical examples, which no one could want. But maybe actually that could lead us to musical examples. Is that what we want to do?
YouTube will at some point say this is violations of whatever.
Yeah, but it will
So-
probably not do it in the live context, and it will probably also not take down this video. It will just mute the parts later, but people can still see the name of the song and the cover of the thumbnail of the YouTube video that we took it from, so people can watch it and listen to it themselves. So I think this could be useful. Just before we do that, I'm gonna look into the comments.
Yeah, while you do this is, so far, folks, this is our idea of a structure, how to differentiate and how to look at the ingredients we use to produce certain sounds, in what combination, and into what parameter. This so far is the theoretical part, which we sort of came to realize we needed something to work with, to visualize, to work with students, and even for our understanding and our own visualization, to be able to determine, okay, now this is more this and this is what happens there. So and now so far this is the theoretical part. Now we get into hearing actual singers and see what he, she, or whatever did or does in the videos. So far, if you got questions, just type them into the chat or comment afterwards, or ask Tony, because I got no clue. I'm just here for the good looks.
So while we're talking about good looks, I'm gonna make sure you don't see my face anymore, but the presentation, which should be the case now.
Yeah, it is.
So we're gonna listen to some creaking examples. So creaking is the vocal effect we call. No, creaking is what we call the vocal effect where the true folds vibrate irregularly because of the laziness. If you remember my example from earlier on, and this is a nice creaking example from Radiohead. I'm gonna stop it so it's not too long. Maybe the algorithm won't catch it, but you could hear there was a distinct pitch. We could analyze it with the roadmap and say, what's the register? What's the closure? What's the compression level? Right? I'd say we could call this a mixed voice. Maybe people would disagree and say we call this a chest voice, but we could find it on that roadmap. And then we could hear a distinct subharmonic. So it's regular. It's not just noise. It's a nice interval that we're getting. And I'm going to play just once again very quickly. Maybe you can listen for that interval. And it even switched. Went down a fifth. That is a nice detail. It's not relevant to most listeners at all, but it is relevant to me. Another example of irregular creaking. Enough of this example. Maybe it's short enough for the algorithm not to catch it. This is Nico, a German model and singer. You might know her from the Velvet Underground projects. Very interesting sound, and one of the few examples where people actually use this in isolation. Oops.
Yeah,
yeah.
This is something that I've used this example before as well, and I heard several comments on, oh, isn't this just vocal fry? No, it's absolutely not, because vocal fry is the pulse register and is just a vocal register with regular phonation, whereas this is creaking. So this is a totally different thing, although I hear the similarities.
And you can look on the vocal effects roadmap on Marco's screen and see we can be in different registers. We could be in head voice and have irregular creaking. So it could be like this. this. And I didn't change my pitch. I didn't go low. I stayed up there. And that gives me a bit more white noise than just separate pulses or clicks.
Exactly, and if I weigh in here, this is just something that you singing teachers probably want to do with students. Don't just go in full screaming. It's just like, first you go for the vocal fold closure. You go for openness and closure, as you do with maybe in head voice, something like that. So okay, it's open and it's vocal fold is closed and there's regular vibration. So far so nice. And do the same if you wanna train the creaking. Don't go just full in screaming, something like that. Joke on. Try something. It's easy, it's smooth, and go in and out. So it's just the coordination which our brain needs to adapt. It's not just the emotional. It's not the emotional response here at all. It's just learning to get from A to B and back all the time, on and forth. So
very nice. I've got one or two more examples.
Nothing's gonna harm you.
On this note, you could hear a more subtle creaking. It wasn't ooh, it wasn't ooh,
Yeah.
the super dirty sound. Yeah.
But the ooh always is a toughie. That's for
It
sure.
is. But now we could look at the vocal effects roadmap. I hope you can read
No one can
the
see
words
right
on the
now.
screen as soon as Marco pulls it up again, and we could say, okay, what's the difference between ooh, this regular creaking, and then the more subtle sound that Jamie Cullum does? And we'd probably find answers looking at the compression level. But we're gonna write recipes for one of Drew's sounds a bit later. First, we're gonna listen to examples so that we know what different contexts, what different styles people use these in. And this one's a pop example, or hip hop, you could say.
I can be your lady, I'm a woman, I'm a motherfucker, but they got a problem. Put some baby
Oh, she used.
in your life
Oh,
and take a
she used the bad word too.
Yeah. Pfui, as the Germans say.
Yeah, but you could hear this kind of sound in her voice. So it's not just a metal thing or a jazz thing, but it's also something that a mainstream audience can take and loves. We have false vocal folds. This one's a very nice example.
This ain't a song for the broken hearted.
And it's not completely regular. It's not machine-like. Sing a song! It's more dirty in this case. So I particularly like this example because we don't have any instrumental taking away the nuances. It's very nice to hear. If you want to hear it again, play the stream back. I don't want to give too much food to the algorithm to...
This ain't a song for...
Now I did it.
Yeah. Oops, you did it again, to quote another singer. Yeah.
I did it again, and we could even find
baby.
this song,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
sound on the vocal effects roadmap as Paul's register. This one's a more regular example.
Damn!
You can hear a nice little interval, and you can hear a lot of twang. It's distinct twang, I would say. This one's a pop example.
She offers me protection.
This is a more subtle distortion. It is regular too. We could hear an octave. And both of these pitches in there. It's not as aggressive as the others, though. This one's a musical theater example.
So you got what you always wanted. So you got your dream come true. Good for you.
You can hear a bit of extra noise in there. It's not just distortion, it's also a bit of breathiness. So she's pushing a bit into the distortion. And on the vocal effects roadmap, you could see it's kind of in between of the flow phonation and the breathy phonation, but it also has a bit of compression. So it can be breathy and compressed at all. It's not the same as pressed. The vocal folds don't completely touch, which makes the distortion a bit harder, but she's a professional. So she's quite good at balancing the different intentions. Oops.
Come on, feel the noise.
This rolly sound that you hear here is a perfect example of rattle in chest voice, which is quite hard to do for most people. So it's nice we have a good example of it. This one.
What you don't believe.
I'm gonna do it in falsetto, but she's pretty good at doing this in what I'd call a mixed voice. And then we have a pop example. Yeah! So this one is a pretty nice chest voice example too. I wanted to show one. Oh no! Hang on for a minute.
What happened?
I wanted to show another rattle example, but my computer is acting up, so it jumped over that rattle example and went further than I wanted to. But this is the example I wanted to show. Can I hear yours, Marcos?
Yeah, that's typical Halford, yeah.
So that's a head voice based rattle, and rattle is the name that we give to the vocal effect that's being created by the arytenoid cartilages vibrating. In this case, quite regularly. We're gonna go to the next category.
I found my thrill.
So this one's the what I call area-epiglottic growl. Area-epiglottic is a bit confusing because it implies the area-epiglottic folds are involved, which is not the case. We're talking about the epiglottis going towards the arytenoids. So that's
right.
how I come
and,
to the term.
And gladly he found his pills. I found my pills! Thank God
He did.
he did. So,
Sounds like some of them got stuck a bit here, but it's a very nice sound and it's quite relaxed, as you can hear.
On Blueberry Hill.
So low levels of compression. I think we have perfect closure, but it's not squeezed, it's not pressed. So this is interesting.
Well, I thought I knew you, thinking that you were true.
Yeah, this one's got a higher level of compression. Full closure too. And what would you add? What's the difference between this example and the Louis Armstrong example on our vocal effects roadmap? I mean, I mentioned the most obvious ones already. So if you don't have any addition, you don't have to say any. But yeah, I'm just gonna give you the chance to say something, if you have.
you mean say or right? I don't know if I'm addressed here. So
Yeah, Marco. Sorry.
oh right, okay. So now I'm nervous. I can't contribute anything. So yeah, very good. I have most of the examples I use as well. For the rattle, of course, our famous Rob Halford, something like that, of course, and the Armstrong passengers, which are really totally different. Although in both cases we have somehow our not totally correct arytenoids involved here. One with the epiglottis, the other, and of course totally different in terms of vocal register, in terms of twang and other stuff. So this is really interesting to look at it in so many categories, or divided into so many structural elements. Simply because if we just say, okay, this is rattle, this is a pop growl, not everything is just that. So what exactly is the rattle then? Is the rattle only in head voice? No. That would be a too narrow sort of way of looking at it. So yeah, I like asking questions to students for the extra sort of confusion, and yeah, to really mix things up and say, okay, what if there are so many differences? What combines these? What is the uniting factor here? And if we can tell, oh, this is what unites them. There is some sort of regular extra tissue moving, or tissue moving regularly. What tissue is moving here? So different, and also even more different if we apply the resonance strategy and everything else there.
Yeah.
So again, just naming it names for sake of, yeah, let's give it, come on baby, give me names. This is just not the real deal here. This is, to me, this is gonna get us nowhere when we have even more names, even more terms we can mix up with others, and more confusion. So I invite everyone to listen carefully to what you listen to your favorite singers, to whatever, even if you don't like them, just listen carefully. What is it that you are hearing? Is it, Toni mentioned so brilliant observations there. Okay, there's an extra tonal, whatever, it's a fifth added there, or is it irregular? To what degree? Is it breathy? Yes, no. And if it's breathy, is it due to a chord closure? It is. What if so? If the chord closure is not sufficient, or is left open to a degree, the so-called dorsal triangle. So if you look at it, you will notice why it's called that way. So, and not only that, what is the compression part here, and so on and so forth. So it is complex, and you only get a grip if you learn to listen to singers of different genres and listen to these specifics. Not only, oh, vocal effect, yeah, I heard it, great. So what vocal effect? Where is it placed? How is it attained? And yeah, I also love to look at what is the context. So does one just add a vocal effect, like in Amazing Grace? So okay, yeah, so that's pretty. Okay, great. Now you've done a vocal effect. Awesome. Or does the singer have the ability to dial it in and out and get into another one? So this is where it really gets interesting, folks.
Yeah. I'm gonna answer some of the questions that we have in the chat, because actually there's a lot of them since we last checked.
From our one viewer, right? So
it's actually 10. It's really good for the first stream. So we have Luke asking whether the roadmap is set up such that each column can be regarded independently from the others. For example, can you alter the phonation without involving compression or twang? Depends on what you call the phonation. So whether you mean, can you alter the register without altering chord closure, without altering compression? I'd say yes. I could have chest voice with pressed phonation like this. This is not completely independent from the false faults, though. They will approximate. So this is a good question. But you can alter register and chord closure and compression. You could have flow phonation. You could have breathy phonation. You could have breathy phonation without compression or with compression. So this is compressed but also breathy. You could have the same thing in falsetto. But now it's not completely independent because I got a bit of creaking. So there's intersections there. This is why at some point after we've listened to all the sound examples, I'm gonna give some recipes, because not all combinations work equally well and equally intuitively to most people. So some recipes, some combinations of parameters are more likely to lead you to success depending on what your goal is. You want to say something, Marco?
The really intriguing things, the really intriguing question, which I often ask myself, are they really not that independent, or am I just not able to use them independently? Is this a bias? Is this something I'm just not used to do? So this is the real question. This is a really I want to use the mind F word thing. So if you really try to, you should. Our brain, our synaptic system should be able to control every fiber of our muscles independently to that degree that we should, whatever, have the potential of using these factors independently. And just so we can't or we cannot yet, so the word you just used, or the term, is it's more likely to happen. And I would agree with that. So only because something's more likely does not mean the other thing is not possible. So maybe you can. Here's a challenge for you.
The next thing the comments say is lots of compliments on your creaking, Marco.
Aww.
And
Thank
then a question from music accounting. So creaking encompasses things like chest overlaid with fry, falsetto over. So this is interesting. This is exactly the reason we kind of avoid the term fry so far. If we think of this creaking as chest overlaid with fry, that to me implies we have this register and this register, the pulse register, it's at the same time, which is not possible. That's exactly the reason we say creaking is not the same thing as pulse register. Both are called fry, but they're not the same thing. They're different kinds of fry, so to say, or just not related at all, you could say. In fact, I could try to start in pulse register and add creaking. You can hear how it jumps down an octave, even though it was already in that register. So if both of that was fry, I would combine fry with fry. That would be fryception. It doesn't make sense logically. So I wouldn't say that is chest overlaid with fry or falsetto overlaid with fry. I would say this is creaking, not pulse register.
Very well answered. I often use this, especially if we're in Zoom calls or Skype calls, that I'm going to really make sure at this point, now I'm going to add this, especially if we are in pulse register or M0, and then go into a creaking or give an extra creaking, so that you can say something. Of course, it is difficult to hear over the microphone. It's difficult to hear. It has a completely different feeling. It is a different coordination. And for some, if you're not trained to listen to the specifics, you probably won't notice. So again, I encourage everyone to listen and really try to determine the differences. This really is a game changer, even if you don't practice right away. Just learning to hear the differences and then being able to determine, that's gold.
Yeah. The next question is how to start experimenting with false fault distortion without getting hoarseness. Is it important to avoid compressing them too much? I want to answer this first because I have hard opinions on this, which is I would start by first being very clear about the goal sound. Am I going for a twangy sound, or am I going for kind of this weightlifty sound? I would decide for one. One has lots of twang, and one has little twang, but a lot of compression, hyper compression, you could say. I would not mix them up in the beginning. That's we're gonna get into that later. That's two different recipes. As soon as you're good with just this distortion, which doesn't have a lot of compression but a lot of twang, and this one, which doesn't have a lot of twang but a lot of compression, you can start combining both. Usually in beginners, this leads to problems, as several of my students who are watching live have experienced personally. um, and you know, this kind of hoarseness thing that you talked about, Nico. This actually relates well to Ella's annotation concerning Doja Cat. She said the Doja Cat example, the na 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 na, with a bit of creaking, isn't a clear example because the throat is fucked up after smoking and surgery. That might be the case, but we can still hear clean sounds from Doja Cat and creaky sounds from Doja Cat. And that wasn't random creaking. I would say na 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 na. She was getting it on almost every syllable in a very controlled way. So there is some intention there. So I'd say even voices that have some damage. I don't know what her throat looks like, but even voices who have some alteration on an organic level can still control the amount of vocal effect that is happening. I just go through all of the other questions because there's actually quite a lot that started. But if you want to add something.
Yeah, just a quick thing
Yeah.
to add there to the whether I go for a twangy distortion or a hypercompressed distortion. This, as you said, is a totally different strategy. And here's something I often tell to students. The means of controlling the distortion is on a different level. Meaning, if you're in twangy, so what is oh, it's probably too much, or it's not control anymore. So what is your lever for controlling the amount of distortion you want to add? And this is something different with twangy distortion than it is if you're hypercompressing. So if you push more air while hypercompressing, you're gonna mess up your voice. You're ending hoarse. Because so here we are not in terms of using good airflow or different. It's the opposite. The hypercompression actually closes the vocal folds even more from the lateral. I wouldn't say pressing, but you know, the pressure. So, and if I'm going to push more, I'm going to end up, you know, in a sort of breathy pushing open the glottis there. But if I'm in twangy distortion, I have a totally breath flow ratio, a totally different and then add a distortion. Oh, there was a different one. So what did just happen here? If I at a certain point over push or find myself in a different situation where I didn't intend to be, I'm screwed. So hey. So now I am where I want to be, and then I know how to sort of manipulate or lead or control the amount of distortion I want to have, and then can still add the way I want to go with my resonance strategy and everything. So, but if you are on a different, if you're using a different strategy, and this is what happened to some students of mine in the past as well. So if they think they are in twangy distortion, they think twang is their way to go, and they didn't notice because of vocal fatigue or whatever on stage, confusion or bad sound or whatever, they sort of tend towards the hypercompression. Then they want to give more, and they are accidentally using the strategy that is dysfunctional. So, and this adds up to the problem. So it is, and I'm with you on that, Tony. I have a strong opinion on that as well. If you want to learn to use distortion on your clean tone, on top of your clean tone, it is totally important to know where you are at the moment. Not just cognitive, not just looking at the map itself, not just knowing where what part is in your body. This is just for better understanding and remembering what things to do. At the end of the day, it is very important to have the muscle memory for it, to have the coordination for it, and then realizing, okay, I am safe because I am in the strategy I intended to use. And then I know which lever to push or pull in order to alter the sound or the degree of distortion. So again, yes, please people, please folks, practice with that. before going overboard and then ending up hoarse or losing your voice
Yep.
every other.
Nice. The next question from Music Accounting asks specifically about the Bruno Mars sound. I think before we can give a detailed recipe for what exactly makes for Bruno Mars' sound, we'd have to listen to a particular example, which we could do, I think, in a later live stream if everyone's interested. Right now, what we're doing is we're analyzing some examples that we thought were quite clear, but then we have this interesting comment from Guillaume whether there's a mixture between distortion and rattle in Painkiller. I'd say that Rob Halford does tend to distortion. At the same time, I think Painkiller has kind of emerged as a perfect rattle example. We'd probably have to listen to the isolated vocal track to see whether it actually has some distortion in there, whether there's some Mandela effect thing going on where we remember faster than a bullet differently from what it is in the original. So it could very well be a mixture. What do you think, Marco?
Yeah, I think as well. The isolated vocal track will give us clues. And there's total difference between some live recordings. On some live recordings, he even sounded more like Ozzy, but that's a different thing. But you know, there's the studio version is, to me, is mostly pure rattle. But not always did Rob Halford use that. There's a lot of distortion parts. Maybe you or some of you know the song "We Are Stars." This kind of, you know, as a pendant to the Live Aid songs with a lot of singers there, from Jeff Tate over Ron James Dio. And Halford has a part in there as well, and there we hear more distortion than we hear rattle.
Yep.
So if he did it by accident or, you know, intended to, I don't know. But yeah, he or his pharynx was able to really attain all these things. Yeah, so...
Yeah, I think also in Painkiller, especially at the end of the song, there's a nice switch from distortion, Painkiller, this part to Painkiller. So that the first one I'd say is chest voice distortion, very clearly.
Yeah.
The second one should be pure falsetto or head voice rattle.
Yeah, in Halford, in his chest voice or chest dominant nick sometimes. He dominantly uses distortion, so that's sure. So in the rattle, that's for the extra boom on the high notes on the voice notes. Yeah.
And fitting to that, we have Music Accounting's third question for rattle and chest voice. Does the bubbliness get better in regards to more energy? I interpret that as, do you get more regular rattle if you add more energy, as opposed to under-energizing and getting an irregular rattle? I would say yes. I would say if you go for a regular sound, that requires a certain energy. And if you don't give that energy, either by over-pushing or by under-energizing, you kind of detune the regularity of it. And this is quite hard to do. I can try once, not sure if I manage to do so. Now it was less regular. I had still
sound a little like Udo Dirkschneider now. So.
Yeah, and he tends to do that. I also had a bit of saliva vibrating now, because probably there's a lot of just fluid around my arytenoids. So we can listen for these details and be like, okay, where's the noise coming from? Is it just irregular vibration, or is it some extra noise source? And theoretically, if mucus, if phlegm, if any fluid was more controllable, that would be another vocal effect source. And then we could ask, is it a glottal effect or is it a supraglottic effect? Because technically the fluid is above or on the vocal folds.
Sure. It's all mucosa. So the tissue it's mucosa. So, but this is something, and here's an idea and a suggestion. We discussed this in the past, Tony. We probably will do other live streams, and then we can, of course, collect questions from you guys. write it in the comments, or if we disable the comments, write it to us personally, or ask someone else. No, just kidding. We collect questions and maybe suggestions of singers of specific sounds, and then we can discuss this specifically. So otherwise, people just fall asleep now. We are live for about 2 hours now. So
Not really yet, because we started a bit later, so it's actually 100 minutes.
now then we are fine. Then we're fine. We can do for another 3 hours straight.
Yeah.
Order pizza.
What I'd probably do is I go through some of the other audio effects just very quickly, so we have them all. And then if there's more questions, we're gonna answer them, and maybe then the 2 hours are full.
Yeah, that's just quite good for the appetite. So okay, and then this is something we do in the future. Then we have recipes and say, okay, here we pick 3 examples of Kurt Cobain, of Russell Allen, of whatever singer comes to mind, and then we can listen to them. Bruno Mars is in the example. And then, okay, here we hear specifically Bruno Mars is doing this and that, and in another example we hear something different from him. So we have sort of 2 varieties or 3 varieties of the same recipe. This could be really interesting, and it really takes some time and preparation, because it's not just everything you hear. Okay, so I can do this on the fly, whilst programming and visualizing on screen. Maybe in the future.
Yeah.
If we get our assistant and our $1 million raise.
Of course.
Next year. Yeah.
I'm gonna share this one again. We have enough. We've had enough growl examples. I think. I'm not gonna play this one. You can search for this song. It's a very nice song. You can listen for the whole version. It's like 7 minutes long. I'm also not gonna play this one, which I personally love. Just for the sake of time, listen to Björk. Not even for the vocal effects. Listen to everything she does. We're gonna talk about what we call false chord scream, and this is a weird name because it implies that it's being made purely by the false vocal folds, which is not the case. Again, this is a case of peer pressure. We are using a term that the community has agreed on years before this live stream. What we mean by a false chord scream is the whole larynx, all of the tissues basically vibrating irregularly. We have the true vocal folds grunting, if you remember this one. We have the false vocal folds vibrating irregularly, and we have the arytenoids also vibrating irregularly. We could isolate the arytenoids and be like, this is not the full false chord scream. The full false chord scream has all of these sounds like this, or like that. Or let's let Mika Lagerfeld give a better example than any of us. I think that's enough from him.
Probably too long. Yeah.
Yeah. But then Opeth are nice guys, so maybe not. Yeah. Sorry.
I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to interrupt the playing of the song for our algorithm.
Yeah. Who knows whether that actually makes a difference though? It's just a homeopathic sprinkling in of vocal effects examples. We have this female example. With a slightly
I love
different
Ginger. Yeah, I love her.
We have this very, very low example. And the question with this one is it digitally altered, or does it just darken the sound color very much? We didn't talk too much about sound color. That would be too much information for one chart. But of course, once you have your effect, obviously the mouth shape makes a difference, but also the larynx position, the soft palate. And of course, if you genetically have a very long vocal tract, you have a bit of an advantage in darkening stuff. So this is what Alex Terrible does very well. And then here's another classic example.
I want to throw in Chris Barnes, early Cannibal Corpse, and later 6 Feet Under. I
Yeah.
don't know, and this was the time before everyone was all about autotune and Melodyne. So I'm pretty sure whatever he does or have there going on is pretty huge, because there's so much cuperto and so much openness. It's just so.
Now we're introducing the classical terms into metal.
Oh!
Coperto
Oh,
false
don't do
corde
that.
scream.
Yeah, la messa di voce. Yeah. Pizza diavolo. Yeah, not yet.
So let's quickly do some German stuff now, so we get away from the Italian. Let's hear Angela Gosso. I'm gonna stop the example and skip to the end because there's a nice high false chord scream. It's a brighter sound color. Also Nemesis. I didn't catch that one in there, but of course, there's a lot of variation you could do in any screaming technique based on the shaping of the vocal tract, but the effect stays the same, and that's what we're concerned with today. Fry scream. So this is the first time we're gonna actually use the word fry, again out of peer pressure. We don't mean the pulse register, we mean creaking. So any scream that is based on whoa, this irregular kind of fry, but possibly combined with false full distortion, a written note rattle, whatever combination works best for the context. So we call it fry scream. Here's Andy Zizek. So that's, in my opinion, from what I hear, a falsetto-based fry scream. So it's like, we're somewhere in that range. Wow! And then we're adding creaking and distortion. And it's not a very loud sound, but if you go close to the microphone, it works. You can also again this shit.
What's going on there?
I'm gonna very nice examples. I'm gonna try this again. Yep, now it works. This is Lamb of God.
The blood's on the wall, so you might as well just admit it.
But this is a more compressed example and a darker sound color.
The blood's on the wall.
It sounds very different from the one we heard before, but as there's this thing in there, it's a variation of fry scream. And with Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, by the way, you can often hear these nice sweeps from very low to high screams, which are actually dark to bright screams. So we have a lot of this, but done better by the original Randy Blythe. Female example. Sorry.
I've heard people talk about their Randy Blythe as the false chord screams, and so this is something, again, same thing as I mentioned before with the difference between hypercompressed distortion and, on the other hand, the twang distortion. Here is something, if you're how you say this in the saying, if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And this is this thing here. If you're very fluent with your false chord screams, for instance, you hear it everywhere, and even where it's not even present. So same with Randy Blythe. It's if you play around with different approaches, you will notice, as Toni just did so brilliantly, it's a compressed fry screen. So what he uses, and then there's the mouth shape, or in other words, just he changes the color for the alteration, and this is what he does. This is his recipe. And if you really try to go for it and use false chord screams, you will get somewhere, but not there. So this is it.
Arnaud has an interesting addition to the Opeth example, because he hears a bit of fry in there. And now Arnaud is not just some idiot. who can tell apart Fry Scream and False Chord Scream, I know is a very knowledgeable and proficient screamer himself. So, well, personally, I think Michael Ackerfeld mostly limits himself to false chord. This raises the question: how possible are hybrid variants of false chord and Fry? And this is hard because we have to decide for one thing that happens on the true fault level. It's either creaking or grunt. We cannot have and at the same time. What we can have is we can have the shape that usually is being applied to false chord scream applied to a Fry, which makes it harder. But if you get that, you get kind of a hybrid version. Or what we can also have is we get the grunt in the shape that is usually being applied to Fry. So if we have more compression, which is something you find on the chart, and less of that yawny shape that is typical for false chord, then you could also call that a hybrid, just because it's kind of like the mixed voice term. It's not really anatomically accurate, but perceptually, I guess the word is, just as we can mix chest and head voice, we can also mix false chord and Fry. But yeah, this is more advanced stuff, I guess. I guess a very clear example for false chord scream would be Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse with this kind of sound. There's not a lot of Fry association in there, I think. Here's a female example for Fry Scream. By the way, late singer of the same band that Angela Gosso has sung in, and you can compare early Arch Enemy and late recordings because there's different techniques, false chord versus Fry. And that was very interesting because you could hear her going from these low screams to these brighter shapes that people tend to call high screams. And this is one of my favorite examples, a pitched Fry scream. So with a bit of the tone still lurking through. So you did change the actual pitch. And this is why it's a bit confusing talking about high and low screams, because if I do stuff like this, I don't have any pitch at all, but you hear it going up and down. So what we could say is he has an actual pitch, and then he has a certain color. Wow! And if I'm up there, wow is my pitch. And I could either do it in head voice like I did, or a wow in more of a mix, or wow in more of a chesty thing. I think he's probably mixing there, but he's adding a bit of compression. And at the end, it's not super important what exact register you start this in. It's more important that you get the right amount of atonality or noise and pitch in your scream if you want to do a Linkin Park thing. And we could write different recipes for that. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, you're right. This is something you could easily determine when you, what I mentioned before, look at the spectrum view and see, okay, what are the formants doing here? Even if you don't have a pitch, you still have overtones or formants. So they can tell that you can really tell, oh, this is an A, this is an O, this is a U. So you need to have something, and then you have, you know, the cluster, the frequency clusters, which gives it away, which vowel it is. So, and this is something you do specifically do and modify and rely on when we talk about high-pitched screams or low-pitched screams. What we actually are hearing is not the basic pitch. Well, we sometimes hear the basic pitch though, but more distinctive is the formants. And I say the formants because if you look at it in a spectrum view, you see, okay, fifth, sixth formants. Okay, this is really going crazy, and this goes on exponentially. Depending on the degree of the distortion or the degree of creaking. So if you have a clean tone and suddenly you can see, here is one octave, and this is probably the third format or whatever. You can distinctively see the frequencies. But if the bass frequency is already distorted or in a creaking or a different pattern, then the overtones of it will be distorted as well, and then we have frequency clusters as opposed to specific frequencies.
Yeah.
And the modulation of these is what actually determines the sound. And the modulation of be more like, okay, wow, this is interesting. What's this? There's a tunnel throat and all kinds of the terminology you've probably heard a lot. So, and what actually is this? And most of the time it's the same ingredients, but used with a different overtone structure, modified in the vowel tract. So this, So
I actually want to give an example of this formant thing. And as Arnaud has written in the chat correctly, it's mostly the first formant that gives us the impression of low versus high screams.
Yeah.
If I do ooh, actually ooh, you can already see on my spoken version there's some upward movement, even though my pitch is moving down. Now if I do it without pitch, that's going from low to high scream. And now actually visually this makes more sense, low to high, right? I could also do some tricks like this. Both are a low scream, but the first one actually has higher information on the third, fourth, and so on formants. And in this case, I'm going to, when I do some special tongue stuff, which would be more detail right now than you need, then I can lower most of my formants, not just the first and second, but I can actually make the whole thing a bit darker. So there's lots of variation, lots of funny stuff we could do. Right? This is a nice picture I painted. It's like a kitten.
Awesome. Can you do a castle and a sailing ship next to it?
I'm gonna practice. And then later I'm gonna do that. But what you see is basically melodies that are not coming from my vocal folds or the saliva that is on them right now, but it is coming just from the vocal tract shaping, which is a whole topic for itself, but not our main focus today. I'm gonna continue giving you some examples, and we're almost at the end of our vocal effects presentation. Just one last thing concerning the fry, because I think you hear this really well in the Chester Bennington example. I'm gonna pause it here. This scream is more than 15 seconds long, I think. But
ridiculously long scream there.
Yeah. And he's done it even longer. And the takeaway from this is that Fry tends to have a low airflow. So that means we have full closure or even pressed phonation in most Fry cases. We tend to have at least some compression there, if not hyper compression. And we also tend to we tend to narrow in other parts of the vocal tract, like the laryngopharynx, because all of that helps us resist the airflow and not waste all the air very quickly. And this also relates to the question of, is this a false chord or a fry or a hybrid? Maybe if such thing exists, you can measure how long it takes. If I do a false chord, which I've practiced this technique quite a lot because I have to teach it every week. It doesn't last for very long. That wasn't even 10 seconds. I think I also snapped a bit too fast. But that was a decent...
Still great. Still amazing.
Thank you. And there, of course, there's people who can do it better, but most people cannot hold a false chord scream as long as Chester Bennington can easily hold a fry scream, right? So that gives us information about what is happening on the true fault level, creaking or grunt, if we're not sure. Let's see what else there is. There's variations of this. So we could inhale the creaking, like Serge Tankian of System of a Down does here. And this is an easier way to produce very dark sound colors with creaking than exhale, where it's a bit harder. Do you have a nice inhale
Exactly.
example?
And also just to add that, some singers tend to use inhales every now and then because for them it's easier to lower the larynx and open up the pharyngeal areas. So there's pharyngeal cavities. Especially for singers who are not that trained in good breathing and good flow phonation, or especially in a German word Stütze, and breath
Yeah.
support. If you're really good at breath support, you can hold and support the hell out of a tone for as long as your muscle structure can hold it, can actually pull it off. So this is something. Yeah, for some people it makes it easier. Physiologically, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to inhale because the control is limited.
The control and the articulation is limited, and it's hard to switch back and forth between exhale techniques and inhale techniques because your whole way of breathing, whatever exactly it might be in that case, has to be flipped.
Yeah.
And that is something you have to take into account when you want to do inhale screams. Lots of people say it's unhealthy. It is not inherently less sustainable than other techniques, but every technique has advantages and disadvantages. I think that's enough examples for today. There's a lot more. If you're interested in listening to all the examples we found, I'm gonna show you quickly by sharing my screen where you can find a PDF. Namely, if you go to the website of some guy named Toni Linke, which hopefully you can see right now. He's someone with a very ugly glasses, I think. I have much better glasses than he apparently has, judging from his website. So if you go to teaching free material, he seems to be a nice guy though, that he puts out so much free material. You can not only find several YouTube series, but I'm gonna scroll down. You're also gonna find a Dropbox folder of own material, and then we're interested in rough vocal effects. You can find the presentation that I'm using right now. This is such a nice incident. And then you can also find the vocal effects sound library. So for creaking, we only listen to the Tom York and Nico and Doja Cat and Jamie Cullum examples, but as you can see, there's much more, and that's the case for all of the effects. And the colors you can see are different countries. Of course, no, not countries. Sorry, I just read the word country. Genres. Genre differentiation is, of course, even harder than vocal effects categorization. So don't kill Toni Linke, as apparently he's a nice guy with a nice website. But you can listen to these examples if you're interested, and you won't get blocked by YouTube for listening to those too long. That would be my presentation.
We live for the applause, I want to say.
Applause.
Exactly. So, okay, what we did not cover today is recipes, exactly. But for you to understand and apply a recipe, you need to understand the structure. And we wanted to share with you guys how we came up with this stuff. It's not that we woke up one morning and, Toni, I got an idea. So, although it started with that. Yeah, however, so this is to understand how and why it is structured, what is going on, and why the variety of things is so wildly, it's really vast, There's so many things you can combine. And as there was a question earlier about everything we can, the coloration of the voice, the placement of the voice, and everything else we can do. So many things, and we needed to find a way to, I want to say dumb it down, but it's not totally what's
Simplify it.
Simplify, thanks.
Didactically reduce it.
Yeah, didactics, blah, blah. No, you're right. I totally need a coffee. So, but this is it for today. And we thank you, or at least I do. I can't speak for you, Tony. So I thank you all for dialing in and checking on us and taking your valuable time. So, and I hope that it all causes you to think and experiment and to listen better to singers and to ask questions, experiment on stuff. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about trial and error. And if you're stuck, call us. Call Tony. So
You can find my number on Tony Linker's website. Whatever reason he has my number on there.
I don't know, however that is entangled with one another. I don't know. So
Yeah.
weird. So
Okay.
still confuses me.
Do you have your finger on the red button already to stop the live stream so we can
No,
wave
I don't, but I can totally do so.
and then disappear while we're waving, so it's no awkward
That's
pause.
a good thing. And for other things, just write comments and don't forget, to blame Bill Gates because of the live stream that maybe had hearing flaws here and there. So I need to sit down for this, but I can change the camera. So you have a nice close up.
Oh, nice.
And then I need to get the touchpad. Ooh. Wait, you can start waving. Yeah, start waving, and I go to stop the live stream. This is it.
Goodbye, my almost lover.
Yeah.
Goodbye, my hopeless dream.